Hey everyone, so today's video is a little bit different. Normally we take an exercise that's pretty uncommon and we talk about what it does and how to do it. Today we're talking about the traditional barbell deadlift, which I'm sure all of you are probably familiar with. Today what I want to talk about, I want to give you some tips and advice and troubleshoot some issues that I see a lot, but I don't hear other trainers necessarily talking about too much. Nothing against other trainers. This is just something I noticed. So we'll start out from the front side. So the first thing we're going to talk about are the knees. The knees during a deadlift should never deviate from the line of the toes. So doing the proper deadlift, what we'll see is my knees are moving in a straight line up and down. So what we'll get a lot of times is we'll get knees going in. This is usually when our deadlift is too heavy. So when we're coming up, we'll get those knees that'll start to push in right there. So we don't want to push our knees in because we're putting a lot of stress and tension on all of these ligaments and muscles and bones on the inside of our knees, which are only going to cause issues over the long run. Then we also see the knees go out. This is usually an issue of not knowing how to set up. So we'll set up too close, almost like we're getting ready to do an extremely heavy Romanian deadlift. So you can see my feet are very close, and even when I bend down, my knees are going to go on and go out. Then we pick up and we get the knees that come outside of the toes, opposed to if it's a low enough weight, you can stay in with the toes, but feet are still too close, and then we're doing the opposite. We're creating a lot of stress and a lot of issues on the outside of our leg. Okay, so now we're going to switch to a side view. And really what we're going to look at from here are the hips and the back. So there's three major issues that I want to talk about with this. Number one is don't hyperextend. So when I say hyperextend, I'm usually talking about the end of the deadlift. This is an issue we see with people who are pretty good at the deadlift. They're just doing a little too much. So what I'm talking about is when they're coming through the deadlift, they're hinging, they're pushing the hips through, but they push the hips through so much to the point that they're here. So you can see my shoulders are actually back, and I'm putting a lot of stress on my upper back, which isn't needed when I should just be here with a good hip thrust, which can be fixed at the same time with our next issue, which is the fact this is a hinge and not a squat. If you're not really sure what a hinge is, I would recommend figuring out the definition of a hinge and what a hinge movement is before you go do another deadlift. They can get kind of confusing. So a hinge and a squat are somewhat the opposite. So a hinge, without any weight, you'll see that my hips are going to go back themselves and my knees will bend as a result of my hips moving. A squat, on the other hand, is where my knees start to bend and my hips then bend because of the result of my knees bending. So in that sense, they're kind of the opposites of each other. Each one has the opposite primary mover when we're talking about joints. But so in the deadlift, we see it a lot in the setup. A lot of people that go straight over top and straight down, so they're squatting when they go down. The way I would recommend setting up for the hinge, for the deadlift, is to hinge. So I'm going to let my hips go back, and then I'm going to let my knees go down as far as they have to get to that bar. So that way I'm primarily in that hinge position, and now I'm going to push my hips to come to top. A lot of times when we have people that go down into the squat first, we're getting really over top right here, and we'll get a lot of back issues because you can see my back is so far over, and they're trying to drive so hard with the knees that their knees will come straight, but now I'm stuck here, and with a light weight, it might not be a factor. But once we start lifting heavy, that's when we'll really start to get an issue in the back there. And lastly, I want to talk about probably the biggest thing I see, and it's got a lot to do with a mirror being in front of you, and that is, don't think about having a straight spine, think about having a neutral spine. I was taught this in high school, and I think every high school kid is still taught this. We are taught in the deadlift to keep our heads up. So, what we're getting here is right here, and then we're here through the deadlift. And you see I'm also hyperextended through this. When I say neutral spine, I'm talking about from top to bottom. So our spine doesn't go up from our shoulders to our waist. Our spine goes all the way into the pelvic girdle and all the way up to the skull. So the big thing I'm going to talk about here is the neck. So you can see when I go into my proper deadlift, my head is not going to change position in relation to the rest of my spine. I'm going to go down, and my head's going to follow up. Because when I'm here, I'm bent, all these muscles are already tight. They're already constricted because my head is in this awkward position. So that's why you get a lot of people with these back issues from doing deadlifts, and you get them in the neck and the shoulders, which you shouldn't be getting at all in the deadlift. So just real quick, I want to go over the proper deadlift form for you. I'll do a side and then a front view. So from the side, we're going to make sure our feet are roughly shoulder width apart. We're going to hinge for our setup, then drop the knees slightly to get to that bar, and then my head is going to drop down, and I'm going to push the hips through. I'm going to drop back down, I'm going to follow that knee pattern, and I'm going to come right back up. From the front, like we talked about, our knees are going to stay in that same line with our hips and our toes. Our elbows are not going to have any slack in them from the get-go. So I'm going to load up. You see my elbows are straight, my knees are in line with everything. I'm going to pick up, I'm going to go right back down. Everything straight, no slack, we're all good. So I hope you guys got something out of this. If you have any questions about the deadlift or any exercise, please message me, and I hope you all have a fantastic